When I first jumped into Rust console community servers, I thought it was going to be an unmitigated disaster. Things were rough, but that changed throughout the week, and by the end of the week and the ending of this community servers trial, I can honestly say there's some good, there's some bad, and there is definitely some ugly. And yes, the ugly part would be me. Anyways, let's go over Rust console community servers, what went right, what went wrong, and what I think about them. Should you be buying these? Should you be hoping that they're going to change the way that we play the console edition Rust? Or like unsuccessful drug addicts, should we all just give up on the console edition of Rust? So let's get into it. Let's get into community servers, how it went and everything like that. So basically, the first day I jumped into community servers, I was excited. I wanted to see how it worked, and it worked horribly. Like, the first day was an utter disaster. If you remember the launch of the console edition of Rust, this was probably worse. And to make things clear, when Rust console launched, they didn't have gunpowder, which means you're essentially locked to tier 1, but with the community servers, you were essentially locked to tier 0 because you could pretty much not gather any resources. The game was disconnecting every 10 minutes. If you were lucky, if you were unlucky, you get in and wouldn't even be able to do anything, or you wouldn't even get into the server. And basically everybody was prim locked. People running around with rocks trying to hit each other, and they weren't hitting because of lag, the bandwidth issues. Everything was just so bad that you'd go to like throw a spear, and 10 minutes later your character be whipping a spear across the map into God knows what. It was bad. It was as far as disasters go with this, we should have called FEMA in for this one, but things did recover. All right, so community servers didn't go well. That's why we got the staging branch though. So they managed to pull things together. Honestly, at this point, I was thinking it was going to be another year. I thought community servers weren't going to be coming out. I was like, all right, 2024, 2025, maybe we'll see it. But they pulled things together within a week. Jumped into the servers just before I made this video, and I was running around fine. Didn't disconnect, played for well over an hour, and things ran smoothly. When I got into a fight, it didn't feel like I was lagging all over the place. When I actually, went to attack, my character attacked rather than standing there like a dumbass for 10 minutes and then doing something. It just felt right. So yeah, it felt like a normal game of the console edition Rust. Not elevated to levels of some sort of PC player. You're not getting amazing graphics. You're not running the game on a 4080 because you've got an Xbox or PlayStation. But yeah, everything works. It felt good. I couldn't complain about anything there. As far as the tech goes, it worked. Now, as far as the actual servers go, I do have some bones to pick here. So you've got your normal, target practice build servers. Those we've all gotten used to those. We know how those work. That seemed to be fine. There were some issues with build servers as far as having, I don't know, there were some issues with build servers interfering with build servers or something like that. Like you couldn't have official and community build servers, but that's something I'm confident they can fix. That feels like a very minute bug that someone's going to have to dig through the code a bit, but it feels like something that's fixable. Target practice servers, they were target practice servers. 1x servers were exactly what you'd expect. When you get to 2x and 3x servers, that's where I've got my bone to pick. So they sort of worked and they sort of didn't, okay? Basically, the way 2x, 3x, and pretty much any x server goes is when you hit a tree or a node, you're going to get 2, 3x, whatever the server is, resources. The same works for when you pick up resources off the ground. Stone, sulfur, cloth, anything like that. You pick it up, you get 3x the resources. That does not apply though when you pick up something like fruit. So if you pick up pumpkins, you're not getting 3x the pumpkins, you're getting the normal drop rate for pumpkins. And the same can be said of all resources. So when you go to run a monument and you're looting boxes, you're not getting 3x the scrap, you're not getting 3x the components, you're not getting 3x the guns. Look, some of this is good and some of this is bad. So let's get into it, because I said we're going over the good, the bad, and the ugly, and I'm the ugly. You're listening to my voice. That's pretty ugly too. So let's go over the good and the bad. So yeah, I think that's good and that's bad. It depends what sort of server you're looking to host, and it depends if this is even an option. So here's the thing, right? We don't know the options we're going to get. So it's completely possible that when you start up your server, when you start up your community server, there's going to be an option where you can do 3x the resources and 3x the loot, right? So maybe it is a possibility. You can say, hey, you're going to get 3x anything that stacks, and guns, everything like that, you're not going to get 3x. Or you're only going to get 3x the resources, and anything that you can get from a box is going to be looted normal. I think that makes complete sense, because one of the things that you run into is if you've got a 3x, a 5x server, that means that building is going to be easier, farming is going to be easier. But it also means that if you're looting 3x the materials to build a gun or something like that, guns and everything like that is going to be a lot easier. So you're going to get more conflict. There's not going to be the same amount of gear fear. And for some people, that is not going to be what they want. If you're hosting a server and you still want that sort of gear fear, you still want that intensity behind battles, it makes sense to have bases that are easy to construct and, maybe sulfur and stuff like that that's easy to farm, but you still have some trouble getting something like C4 because, that the tech trash, it's going to take you a little bit to get. It still makes sense. Like that feels like actually like a really good balance to me if you're going for a long-term monthly server, but you want something that people don't need to know live. They can have their base and everything like that, but getting an AK still takes about the same amount of work because let's be honest, once you get into that tier 3 stuff, you're not really just farming materials, you're trying to farm those resources. So basically what a 3x server is on the 3x servers I was playing is it's 3 times easier to build. It's 3 times easier to do a lot of that tier 1 gear, but once you start getting above that, it's not 3 times easier. You're going back to the same sort of drop rate as you would have on a 1x or an official server. Not necessarily bad in my opinion, but that isn't exactly what people want when they say a 3x server. So generally 3x servers drop 3x the loot. And what this means is if you're going to be looting tech trash, you're going to be looting 3 times the normal amount of tech trash. The same goes for metal pipes, the same goes for semi-bodies and everything like that, right? Because that doesn't just make it easier to build, that makes it easier to get guns. That makes it easier to build guns specifically, okay? So there's good and there's bad things about this, right? Like, it's good. I could see where players would want this option when they're creating a server. And to be honest, if I'm probably going to be creating a server, let's be honest. Like some of you guys came out and said like, hey, Serial, I'm willing to donate. I'm probably going to try and create a server. I'm going to try and do something a little bit different around it. I'm not going to be looking for straight up donations. We're going to do some sort of like merch drop or something like that. That's going to be like a little bit like bumped up in price to cover servers. That way, you pay $5 or maybe it'd be $10. You pay $10, right, to help support the Serial Overdrive Rust console servers, and you get a mug for your donation or something like that. Basically, I want to try and make things as fair as possible. And that's not for this video, though. Again, the good, the bad, not the ugly Serial. So what I'm saying here is it makes complete sense that you might want a server where resources drop at 3x, where any mineable resource drops at 3x rate, but things that you're going to get from boxes don't. Because that does add a nice dynamic to it. That means that some stuff's going to be a lot easier to craft, like a bow. And once you get up to the higher level, there's stuff that's going to be a lot harder to craft still, like guns. So you're sort of getting players more like tier 1, tier 2 locked than primitive locked, which I like. I like that. I think that's actually like a really good idea. Like I like that idea, but I wouldn't like the fact if that was the only way that you could build a server. I want servers where you can influence the drop rate, right? Like drop rate is super important when it comes to building the dynamics of a Rust server. If you set the drop rate too high, it's going to be super easy for players to get guns and there's going to be a lot more fighting. If you set it too low, it's going to be super hard and there's going to be a lot of gear fear. So that's a huge component when it comes to balancing servers. And honestly, if we don't have control over building maps, the drop rate is the best way that you can influence that dynamic. Now, I know this doesn't make sense to a lot of people who haven't thought of it, but it really... that is the key component of Rust. That's the key to balancing the game. The drop rate of guns, the drop rate of gear, the drop rate of just the things that you need, right? Like farming makes sense. Farming is like an obvious one, but drop rate really is where it's at. Because honestly, if it's 3 times easier to build a massive base, but it's 3 times easier to raid a base, you end up with sort of the same result. People with no life can easily raid these bases that take 3 days to build, and you've still got this no life versus life problem. But if it's easier to build a base and a lot harder to raid a base, then again, like the people who don't have all that much time and are just going to build a big, massive base because they can put in a couple hours, but they can't. You see what I'm saying? Like it works. It works in my opinion. It does work. Like there's nothing wrong with the way they've implemented these servers. The bad thing would be if they didn't give us a choice to go the other route and make it just everything drops, in bigger amounts and bigger quantities. And I think they could. I think like. I think that honestly, like this is just me picking at it because I really do think that this is going to be like, I feel like they've thought about this. If you've played any 2x or 3x servers on the PC version Rust, you know that there should be that option to 3x along with the resources mined, 3x the resources looted. And I think they're going to do that. So I think when I say bad, I mean, there is a potential for bad, but overall, coming in on the end of this community servers testing, I think we're go for launch. I don't know if they're going to be dropping in November. I don't know if they're going to be dropping in December, but I'm a little bit more excited. I'm a little bit more hopeful than I was before, and that says a lot because honestly, people always say like, Siri, you're crying, you're critical, you're too blah, blah, blah of Rust, and I am. But when I say something's good, when I say something gives me hope, that should also give you hope because if you know me, if you know that I'm critical, if you know that sometimes I'm crying over things I shouldn't be, the fact that I'm excited, the fact that I'm saying this is good should show you something as well. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. And like I said, in the future, once we know more about when community servers are going to drop and everything like that, you can expect to see a video on the Serial Overdrive edition of these servers. And fair warning, they might be coming out in January instead of December, November. We're just going to have to see how things land, but like, I can't stop Christmas for this. You know how mad my kids would be if that happens? D11. You can't make my kids sad. Until next time, peace.